Robots are becoming a bigger and bigger part of our lives. Every day, new technology arises to make our lives easier and to do things that we can't or don't want to do. Engineers are working hard to make robots more accessible for humans, and in doing so we are moving closer and closer to the ultimate goal, a robot with a human-like consciousness. Many philosophers believe that such a time is not far away, and others believe that we will not see a conscious robot in our lifetime. But how can we know what to expect in our future? Well, one of the toughest concerns for experts in the field of robotics is that every day is a learning experience, which means that we never know where we're going to go next, and the sky's the limit. The best way to get an idea of where we're headed is both from the theories of philosophers and scientists, as well as fiction, which is sometimes used as a basis for the work that the robotic engineers perform. There are already a lot of robots out there that perform a variety of tasks. Cleaning, construction, and manufacturing are common jobs for modern robots. However, behind the scenes there are scientists working towards a much higher goal, the conscious robot. The main objective for these scientists is to create something that is not only capable of performing tasks that they've been programmed for, but also to be able to learn new and more complicated tasks, as well as communicate with humans. They hope that in the future we may see robots that can move and work like humans, learn new tasks with little training, and react to and interact with their human masters.
No, you're not to do that. No.
One major jump in the quest for a conscious robot is a project called Kismet. Kismet is a robot that resembles a human face and is capable of recognizing and reacting to human emotions with emotions of its own. Creator Cynthia Breazeal and the MIT labs are working to refine the robot to be able to develop new behaviors and responses independent of human influence, which would be a major step in simulated consciousness. Already the robot is able to generate human-like facial expressions in response to voice-recognized and facial-recognized human emotions. Additionally, the robot has developed specific responses to particular faces, suggesting it is already learning. It seems that the resounding theory that is concurrent with most scientists and philosophers is that in order for us to be able to create and simulate a human-like intelligence in a robot, we first have to understand and define said consciousness. Most of the critics say that no matter what we do and how far we advance technologically, the responses we receive from robots will always be pre-programmed. Even if we are able to teach them new behaviors and responses, they will still be reacting to a stimulus. Others counter the skeptics by pointing out that, for the most part, what we call human consciousness is exactly that, responding to stimuli. The most difficult obstacle we face as we try to move forward in creating simulated consciousness is the human element. We have to accept the potential of a simulated consciousness that could rival our own. One major aspect of a human consciousness is the capacity for thought and language, and therefore it is of course something that scientists are working towards with a conscious robot. The best way of testing this capacity is something called the Turing test. Invented in 1950 by Dr. Alan Turing, the test is surprisingly simple. Human testers sit and communicate via an instant messaging program with either another human or an artificial intelligence complex. If the testers incorrectly mistake a computer for a human more than 30% of the time, the computer passes. Passing the test doesn't automatically define that computer as human-like in terms of consciousness. It's certainly a large step for that computer to be recognized as even somewhat human-like, and it's definitely a move in the right direction in the quest for a conscious robot. It doesn't really matter anyway, though, as no program has ever passed the test. This doesn't necessarily mean we aren't making progress, however. Professor Peter Warwick, who has organized Turing test competitions for the last 10 years, theorizes that conscious robots are definitely possible. The first step, he says, is human interaction. For robots to be recognized as conscious, they need to be able to actively interact with us. He thinks that once we can clear that hurdle, adding other aspects of consciousness such as the ability to learn, the ability to make judgments, and other things that we consider part of human consciousness will sort of fall into place. The robots are already thinking, he says, but they still need to be able to do it more like we do it. He brings up the argument that many critics have, which is that while the responses are variations of programmed responses to stimuli, that is the same way the human mind works, and therefore they are incredibly similar already. Warwick, like many other philosophers and professors, considers language and conversation to be the single most important aspect of robot consciousness, and for good reason. For them to be considered to have human-like consciousness, they're going to have to be able to talk to us. Daniel Dennett also has several documented writings on this topic, including an article written in 1994 about his work and theories about robots. Dennett believes that robots definitely have a place in our future with a potential for an almost human consciousness. His big reason for believing this is possible is that he shares the opinion that most philosophers have, which is that humans are in a sense robotic themselves. He says we are extraordinarily complex, self-controlling, self-sustaining, physical mechanisms, and we operate physically and mentally based on set principles that are learned and built into us. However, he does point out that it is highly unlikely that we will see anything resembling human consciousness in the near future due to the high cost of such a project. In his opinion, it will be simply too expensive to create something that complex. A conscious robot would be more than just an assortment of microchips, motors, wires, and cameras. Something else has to be there, and we just aren't capable of creating it yet. Dennett was actually part of a robot project in the 1990s. He was a member of the COG team at MIT. COG was, at the time, the most advanced robot ever in terms of consciousness. The scientists were trying to build a robot that could perform independent tasks and learn from past experiences, things typically associated with human consciousness. Dennett, like most philosophers who have talked on this topic, points out that having a physical body is extremely important to the consciousness of a robot because it gives the mind something to experience and learn from. This team laid out the groundwork for the robotics of the last 10 years, and the project continues today.